Have you ever had a family member try and sell you a lotion or a potion? Maybe they got enthusiastic about like a multi-level marketing product or something like that. I don't know if you've ever had this experience, and oh no, they're trying to sell. It's the worst feeling, right? When someone is trying to sell you something and you think that's happening on a friendly level. What happened to me was my father would get into these sort of different sales opportunities, shall we say. And so one time he got into this insurance business, and it was, no offense to any insurance salesman if there are any present. I've sold insurance before, so. But it was a very buck you up-o kind of insurance convention. And all the different salespeople came out and to explain why you needed, sales insurance, and how every person, past, present, future, needed life insurance or whatever it might be. And then at the end of all of these presentations, the big CEO of the insurance company came out, and all the previous presenters had PowerPoints and slides and all these things, and the CEO then came out there in this suit and nice tie, and there was this big pregnant pause, and he said to everyone, and this is like a thick East Coast kind of Jersey accent, "I am the slide." And all the insurance, everyone just started erupting. Some people even stood up. It was like the closest thing to insurance salesman samadhi that I've ever witnessed. Why am I sharing this story with you? Because you are the slide. We think that we're a man, we're a woman, we're old, we have to use a wheelchair now, we have to wear a boot, we're from the Northwest, we're American. But of course, the saints and sages of all clime and time have been telling us that we are the immortal soul. So how is it, if you are the slide, that you are love, you are joy, you are peace, that when we wake up in the morning, we don't always feel like that? Or sometimes you look at yourself in the mirror and you've got your oatmeal there in the morning. You don't feel immortal, you don't feel infinite. So how then can we actually have this divine experience of our soul nature? This is what the path of Kriya Yoga is all about. It's not about talking, although we're talking this evening. It's about your own experience. To me, this is the most thrilling part of the spiritual path. Is Patanjali, who is a great yoga seer, used to say that you could sum up the path with one Sanskrit word, smriti, which means, there's no exact translation right from Sanskrit to English because it's more a language of vibration, but it means closely divine memory. Think about that for a moment. Yogananda wrote in this book, Autobiography of a Yogi, which, if you haven't read it, see Surendra, see us tonight. We can get you a free copy online. This book is incredible. But one thing Yogananda says about smriti, divine memory, in this book, he writes about that experience in cosmic consciousness. There's a whole chapter on it. And he wrote this beautiful mystical poem called Samadhi, which is another Sanskrit word for that oneness, that ecstatic union with the divine, the insurance salesman Samadhi, There is actual samadhi. So if you've had insurance salesman samadhi, you're going to want another samadhi. But the way he defines it, getting back to smriti, divine memory, Yogananda says there's one line that has always fascinated me. And that is, my newly wakened memory, divine. Think about that for a moment. He's saying it's new, but it's a memory. That would imply that it's old, that it's a smriti, it's a divine memory. You see what I mean? So this is the most inspiring. I want to offer this as one seed thought for you this evening, that the spiritual path, the path of Kriya Yoga, is all about just waking up to our own innate divine reality. That we don't have to, Swami Kriyananda, some of you know who Swami Kriyananda was. On your left, our dear friend, mentor, example of discipleship. He was the founder of our Ananda community, the Ananda movement, if you will, the movement of self-realization, one of the founding fathers of communities. Swami used to say, when you have these divine experiences, I know many of you have that meditate, it's not like you've got to pull out your notebook and say, oh, wait a minute, this is really good stuff, right? It's not like you're at that insurance salesman conference and you've got to jot down the formula to make the sale. You are that joy. You are that divine love. You are that peace. It is within you. And it's something that we wake up to. Now, being in America and in the West, we're of a practical nature, right? This is one reason Yogananda and many other masters came to this country, because Americans will ask that question, well, what do I do about it, right? What do they say in Missouri? Show me, prove it to me. Well, how do we awaken to our divine reality? How do we do that? That's actually the root of Kriya. Kriya Yoga, there's a whole chapter in this book also called The Science of Kriya Yoga, which is deeply fascinating and inspiring. Yogananda is not describing the technique in here. I'll put this down. I had some things I might read from it. But in the Science of Kriya Yoga, he explains that word Kriya, again, a Sanskrit word, it comes from the same root as karma, which we probably all have heard. And the root is Kri, K-R-I, which is an action. So he explains very clearly that Kriya Yoga is an action, right? It's something that you can do. We have DIY stores, right? You familiar with those, right? Do it yourself. Well, this is do it yourself samadhi. But Kriya Yoga isn't that you're just doing it on your own. Yes, it is a technique and a practice that you can do on your own, but you do it with the help and the support of divine guidance and of divine friends. And I'll come to that later. But this root of Kriya as an action is something that you can do. But the difference is it's a divine action. It's an action that takes you towards that divine memory. Because we all have this, like as Saint Teresa called it, an interior castle, right? We all have a place within us, like Yogananda ji said, that is untouched, that you can stand unshaken amidst the crash of breaking worlds. Well, I think we all can relate to that, because our world is not breaking. It's broken now. So Kriya can be this way for us to choose. Which way do I want to break? I want to break towards God. I want to break towards my higher nature. And it's an actual, so the science aspect of Kriya is it's a way for us to run a spiritual inquiry. So if I am, as the scriptures say, an immortal soul, how do I actually realize that? How do I have that own touch within my own soul? And so what the great rishis of India realized is that breathlessness is deathlessness. This is something also that we can meditate on. And the Kriya yogis here who already practice this art and science, we can meditate on it. Breathlessness is deathlessness. What does that mean? We have to meditate to actually experience it. But what the yogis realized is that your breath is intimately connected with your state of consciousness. Isn't it so? If you're angry or frustrated, right? We even have that expression that someone flares their nostrils at us when they're angry, or when we're calm and concentrated, that the breath is calm. And so the rishis realized this secret, this mystic key of awakening. Did you ever do geometry in high school and you had to back into a proof? I used to like those kind of problems where you had triangles and you had to square the triangle, or it's probably wrong if there's wrong terminology, but you know what I mean. You had to back into it. You had to prove it. It's the same way. So you don't have to believe this is the beautiful thing. You don't have to believe anything we share. You don't have to believe in God. You don't have to believe in anything other than just have a modicum of willingness to run an experiment. Yogananda used to say, Americans, you love to experiment. Why not experiment on yourself? Why not? Why not try this experiment and see what happens to your life if you try and follow this trail of inspiration. I am an immortal soul. I don't know if I buy that, but I'm willing to explore it. And so this exploration can begin very gradually. And it begins by this understanding that there is a connection between our breath and our state of mind. And we all have this universal language, right? We know when somebody feels high, we use that word. I feel high. I feel uplifted, right? I feel energized. There's a sense of the energy rising. And when someone feels depressed, we use the other kind of language. I feel downcast. I feel low. Isn't it? So that is giving us an indication right there that we have this intuitive understanding that this is how we're made. And so Kriya Yoga, it's a science that allows you to run the experiment, to actually have the experience of being an immortal soul. So if breathlessness is deathlessness, I can actually I can reclaim my divine birthright. What the scriptures declare, the promise of immortality. Because the problem we all have is the little ticker, right, in the old chess. And one day the ticker's gonna bum, 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 right? Our heart's gonna stop. And what's the greatest fear that everyone faces? Is this fear of death, fear of self-preservation. It's the most primal and strongest instinct we have. And so the yogis began to tear at that veil. And they said, well, if breathlessness is deathlessness, how do I conquer that fear? Did you ever hear that story? Swami Kriyananda told it often about William the Conqueror. Because William the Conqueror, Yogananda said he was William the Conqueror in a past life. And there was this time where William was coming, right, for the big battle of Normandy. And he got off the warship there with his army. And he tripped and he fell into the sod, right, of the soil there upon the shore. And a big gasp went up over the army. What a bad omen. Our leader has fallen as we've come on the eve of this great battle. And what did William do? He came up from the earth and he grabbed the soil in both his hands. He said, I'm so determined to conquer this land. I've seized it with both my hands. And a great roar went up from his army. But you see, this is the same thing that the rishis have done for us with the science of Kriya Yoga, that you can become a conqueror. You can become a warrior, not of anything outside yourself. I think we all know the problems that the world faces. It's because it's a projection of what's going on, of all the restlessness and anger and desires and negativity in our own self. So the only way to conquer and overcome that is by some sword, some superconscious sword that can cut through that veil. And so Kriya Yoga is a way to, again, run this scientific experiment. If breathlessness is deathlessness, it's what's fascinating to me. Yogananda actually quoted in the autobiography Shakespeare. There's a Shakespeare sonnet about that. It kind of hints at this yogic key. So shalt thou feed on death, which feeds on men. And death once dead, there's no more dying then. So if we can, what does that mean? Right? What is he talking about? Fear of death. It's the one thing we none of us can escape. Right? A great master in India used to say to his disciple every time they ate together, he said, just remember, every time you eat, time is eating you. Time waits for no man. Right? I grew up, maybe some of you remember this game. There was this game called Hungry, Hungry Hippos. Hungry, Hungry Hippo. It's a really fun game, and these marbles came out, and you pushed the button, and your hippo would eat the marbles, and you would try and get as many marbles. Well, in a way, that Hungry, Hungry Hippo is time in a way. But, there is also a hungrier hippo, and that is the bliss of God. You see, it's that immortal flame. In that same poem, Yogananda talks of samadhi, of this divine ecstatic experience of union with God, anger, greed, good, bad, salvation, lust. I swallowed, transmuted all into a vast ocean of blood of my own one being, smoldering joy, off-puffed by meditation, blinding my tearful eyes. But here's the line I was leading up to: burst into immortal flames of bliss. You see, Kriya gives us this action, right? This divine action, this fire ceremony, so to speak. All these, in India, you see all these pujas, right? Or in the West, we have communion, right? Those that have grown up in the Christian faith, or the Jewish faith, whatever faith it is, there is some act of devotional receptivity or self-offering to God, right? A giving and a receiving. But Kriya Yoga actually gives us a way to do that. So there's the science aspect of Kriya, which is what I've been intimating at through breathlessness is deathlessness. And how do you become that hungriest hippo and eat up all those desires? Well, it's only when you can get into that calm inner stream of God within you, right? And that's when the breath is perfectly still. And when yogis go deeper, they can go into breathless states. We don't have to worry about that. We just start where we are. And we can just start with just these introductory techniques on the path of Kriya that Surendra and the others, what they share here at Ananda, Portland, is this step-by-step process. Because this is another important point that Lahiri Mahashaya on the far left here, that he used to talk about Kriya Yoga, that you never strain, right? It's a natural unfoldment. And so that's why it's also very important to follow the guidance of those that have reached that state. Because we're climbing a different summit, right? It's a more subtle mountain peak. The way of the spiritual warrior, to scale this mountain of our own self-mastery. And it's a real, maybe this is the confession, I play soccer, hence my boot right now. And when I was in college, I had a teammate, and he used to say, it's a simple game. You pass the ball. You run after the ball. You kick the ball. God is simple. Who do you think has created the complex around it? We have, right? All the complexes in our mind. All those feelings, the he said, she said, I don't like this, I don't like that. All of that, that's our own complexes. But God, remember, is that immortal flame. So the science aspect of it is very simple and universal, and it works. But you have to run the experiment. You have to be willing to say, okay, I'll give it a try. But as I was saying before we did that chant, and Einstein talks about this, any great scientists would talk about this, that you cannot unlock the hidden mysteries of life without a sense of mystical awe. Einstein that theory of relativity didn't come to him when he was just cranking out math theorems. He was on the trolley train in New York City. And he felt that motion, and he realized that light moved in a similar fashion. And just in a flash, that theory of relativity came to him. And then it took him years intellectually to prove it. So it is for us. If you can just I suspect everyone in this room has had a moment, a flash, like Einstein did, where you know beyond the shadow of a doubt that you are an immortal soul. And that experience, it's something for us to remember and hold on to. And then to not lose hope, because especially right now with what's going on in the world, there's every reason in the book, right, to just throw out, forget it. What's the hope for the world? What's the hope for me? No. What does the divine man say? I have all eternity to manifest my divine dreams. You have all eternity. There's nothing to fear. This is the other beautiful thing, is that hungriest hippo of God's immortal flame, it starts to take over. It's nothing to fear because it's who you are. So there's a science to it. I'm now trying to balance the science with the art. Okay, the art and science of Kriya Yoga. The art and science, those who know the book that Swami wrote, of Raja Yoga, R-A-J-A. Raja is another Sanskrit word. Royal. The Raj Yoga. You're a Raj Yogi, meaning you are a divine birthright. You're a divine child. Every week at our temple here, we have this festival of light. and we hold this candle up, and we look at this candle flame, and we say, "Oh Lord, with all my heart, all my mind, all my soul, all my strength, I choose thy love. I choose only thee." You see, therein lies the power of our heart. Yogananda said that willpower is actually desire. You could think of willpower as one power. You want something, you go after it. We all know about that in this society. Willpower, he said, is desire plus energy directed towards a goal. So when we get really clear that I don't want the insurance salesman samadhi, I want the unqualified samadhi. Because when we put God first in our lives, by some mysterious fashion, everything else works. Try this experiment. Try to put the divine in the center of your life, and that everything else rotates around that center. Yogananda wrote in another poem, "Wherever I go, the spotlight of my mind ever keeps turning towards thee. God, God, God." It's like a compass, and it just keeps coming back to that true north. Well, your true north is infinite. Your true north is eternal. Your true north is perfect freedom. And that we cannot unlock that mystery because, okay, I got to tell you now that Kriya Yoga is not going to do it for you. Yoga won't do it for you. You have to give your heart to Him. Now, you see, this is where devotion is essential to the practice. And then where Kriya can actually, those Kriya bonds here this evening, we can feel this as well, that Kriya helps our devotion. There was a story of Yogananda was in Bengal. That's where he's from, in India. And he met a man there who was a bhakti yogi, meaning devotional worship, he chanted. It was more, that was his expression, his temperament. And Yogananda said to this man, "You're like," and he was encouraging him to practice Kriya Yoga. But this man said, "No, I don't want to be disloyal to my path." And he said, you won't be disloyal to your path. You're like a man who's been in a dark room, and you're trying to find the door through the ceiling, through the floor, through the wall. I'm just trying to show you where the door is. So Kriya Yoga, the science aspect of it is just saying, where's the door? Well, Yogananda put it in a perfectly pithy way. Your spine, your heart, your brain, that is the altar of God. How do you access that spine? Well, that's what the techniques are for. In the Bible, when Jesus Christ said to Peter, "I give you the keys to heaven," that particular reference, Yogananda was saying, meant these mystic keys of Kriya Yoga, of awakening. But again, those keys and those techniques are null and void without devotion. So we can say breathlessness is deathlessness. We can say all these wonderful, great cosmic sayings. And if we don't, you see, devotion is, you can know the menu. You can rattle off every appetizer, entree, and dessert. But unless you are hungry, you're not going to go to that restaurant to eat. So that's where the devotional, the art of the practice will come into play. And no one can tell us how to do that. It's something we have to discover for ourselves. But I, again, suspect you have felt love for someone or something in your life. And if you can take that remembrance of that love and bring it inside into your meditation, it can be a wonderful marriage, because what's trying to happen in this day, this new age now, and that's why this whole Kriya science has come back out, that there's a new wave of energy, and it's a balanced path. It's, yes, putting God first. Seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all these things shall be added unto you. But it's as Babaji said, it's a golden middle path. The spiritual efficiency of India with the material efficiency of America, that these two will come together to lead a golden middle path. We don't need to go and renounce the world and become monks or nuns or go live in a cave. I think we all have responsibilities, jobs, families, etc. So it's the finding this perfect balance. And it starts by finding that integrated balance within. And that is this Kriya science when it is married with a technique that has been practiced for millennia. Kriya is an ancient science. We have no idea how old it is. Yogananda said you could burn all the Lahiri Mahashai said, right, you could burn all the books on yoga, and wherever there is a true yogi who with true devotion, he will discover these eternal keys. So it's very much as Jesus Christ said. You could sum up, you could think of this path of Kriya Yoga, like the sign of the cross. Yogananda actually said that the vertical line of the cross is symbolic of the infinite. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength. I am love, I am joy, I am peace. You are the slide, right? That's the vertical line. And that the horizontal line is the finite aspect where we come into form. But that can be spiritualized with the second commandment that Christ said, love the Lord your God, all your heart, mind, soul, and strength. And the second is like unto the first, love your neighbor as yourself. All the laws and all the prophets rest on these first two, he said. So this is the path of Kriya Yoga. It's this deep internal communion and experience of God within that is unshakable, that will destroy the destruction of sorrow, of suffering on all levels, right? We have to think about that. We're a triune being. We're physical, mental, spiritual beings. So it's this yoga science. It's not true unless it's true on all levels. So we have that aspect. And then this is the beautiful thing about the Ananda communities. You can come here. You can be with people like David, like Surendra, and others here. And you can just start mixing and playing in the spiritual gymnasium and begin to integrate it, because that's what the world needs now. The world needs our love. Yogananda said in a beautiful meditation, he said, so that the hearts filled with the darkness of hate can be dispelled by the searchlight of your love. This entire path is about the science of loving God, the science of loving him and our neighbor, and the heart and the art of offering ourselves with ever more energy, ever more concentration, ever greater will, until we realize the truth of that proof. We are deathless. We are immortal. We are free children of the light. That's my prayer for all of us.
I'll just share with you very briefly. recently, Naryan and I got into this new diet, and we tend to be sort of extreme in our diets, and whatever we do, we kind of just do it completely. So we got home from Italy, from our community in Assisi, and it was just all carbs. It's like, so we were just getting more and more carbs, and we got back, and our friend Bharvi, she said, so I'm doing this new diet. It's called the bulletproof diet, and you drink coffee in the morning with ghee and coconut. Maybe some of you have tried this before. So I said, well, great, sure, we'll give it a try. And so we start having this bulletproof coffee. Now, if you haven't had bulletproof coffee, it's, for one, I am not a coffee drinker until these past 2 weeks. And so you have a coffee first thing in the morning with a tablespoon of ghee, which is clarified butter, if you don't know, and a tablespoon of MCT oil. It's something from coconut oil. And you blend it all together, you get this beautiful, milky, frothy, yummy coffee drink. So after a couple of days of having this coffee every morning, I would sit then, after my coffee, I'd sit to meditate. And just felt this rush of energy. I was like, wow, this is really good. I'm like sitting up straighter. I've got lots of energy. And meanwhile, we were doing these chanting for healing workshops using Yogananda's chants, and he gave all of his chants qualities, healing qualities. So one for overcoming restlessness and desires, and for seeing or overcoming any bad habits or tendencies, all these different antidotes for these chants. So we did these 3-hour programs of just chanting for 3 hours with our different communities in Southern California. And they were very deep, very powerful. I mean, imagine you can just go really deep into the chants with that much time. And bringing in the qualities and meditation, and how do these affect us in our bodies, in our minds, in our souls. And so I'm every morning equating, I'm having this coffee, and I'm just feeling more and more of this expansive love, and gosh, where is it? Wow, it must be a really, really good coffee. And I realized that's not the coffee. It's because I've been chanting more. It's because I've been tuning into this this devotion, this love for the divine. And that was a pretty good realization. I was glad I got beyond that it was the coffee, because suddenly I was thinking, well, what if I don't want to drink coffee anymore? But the reason I bring this up is that, as Naryan said, devotion is obviously a key element in our spiritual path. And the path of Kriya Yoga is such a beautiful way to say it, because it's not one technique. It's not that we go and we do step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, then we get the Kriya initiation, boom, we're Kriya bonds, and we've now united ourselves with spirit. It's an entire lifestyle. It's a whole life path. And all of the things that we're doing are leading us to that. And the awakening devotion, the learning to concentrate, to focus. Was it Sri Yukteswar, Yogananda's guru, that said, learn to behave? Is that right, or was it Lahiri? Learn to behave. And we're learning as we go. We are children. We're children in the most beautiful sense. And we're children in that we've got a lot to learn. We've got a long process here. And it takes a lot to get us aware of what are our faults, what are our lessons beyond faults. God doesn't mind our faults, but he wants us to learn the lessons. That's why, if you ever notice, they come back again and again and again. You can't. Somebody said to me, that lesson, I think I failed, and I don't know what to do. I'm like, it's gonna come back. We have the infinite possibilities to learn these lessons. They don't go away. And but they become at a higher and higher octave. So we learn at a deeper, more subtle level each time that lesson comes around. So don't think, oh, that lesson's coming back to me. I still haven't learned what I need to learn. Think of it that this is me getting to learn it on a deeper level. And think of it as the path of Kriya Yoga. Because when you say to the divine, when you say to the universe, whatever, however you want to call it, I want to grow, I want to change, I'd like to be a better person, I'd like to be a better wife, I'd like to be a better mother, I'd like to be of more service. God takes that very seriously, and suddenly we're given infinite opportunities to grow, to expand. And this path, instead of thinking of it as the goal is Kriya Yoga, the initiation of Kriya Yoga, which I know many of you already have, the goal is self-realization, of uniting ourselves with that infinite presence of unconditional love, of becoming that unconditional love, of, and I just want to say, I think it looks a lot different than we may have implanted in our minds. That maybe we see the lives of certain saints and we say, whoa, they just look so spiritual. Being in Assisi, you just look out on the hills of Umbria, and it's like you just imagine St. Francis skipping along and without a care in the world. He lived a very challenged life, a very difficult life, and of great adversity, of being forsaken by his friends and his those following him. So don't think that we come on the spiritual path and suddenly all of our troubles. I'm looking at all these great souls who have been around for quite a while, and they know the troubles don't go away, the challenges don't go away. Sometimes it seems, maybe all the time, it seems life gets more challenging. And that is our greatest blessing. That is God saying, we can do it. You could do that. Look at what else you can do. But what we can do is the self-mastery. We can get to a place where we know, because it's happened maybe so many times, that we go, I recognize this. This is to make me stronger. This is for my benefit. This isn't that God's angry with me or that I've done something wrong. This is for me to become whole, to become love, to become joy. So I'll stop there. We want to give you all time, especially anyone who's visiting for the first time, to ask any questions. We've kind of skated around the topic of what the path of Kriya Yoga is, so we're happy to share more specifically if you have any questions. So please feel free to ask us anything.
So you have to have the insurance salesman before you get samadhi?
Fortunately, no.
So how does it work if you don't go to these sales things to get the eye in the slide?
I could sell you a policy afterwards. So,
So why does it take 10 months to a year to receive Kriya?
Do you want to?
yeah, go ahead.
Thank you for the beautiful plant question. It takes time for, well, I'll give you an example from my own personal life. I found Ananda. I started preparing for Kriya Yoga. I took the lessons in meditation, the art and science of Raja Yoga. At that point, I was living in Georgia, so I did it through home study. And I realized I had no relationship with God. I had no connection, no personal connection, no direct experience of the divine. I began meditating, and I began feeling a little bit of peace in my meditations. And I learned, oh, peace is an aspect of God. And then I started feeling a little bit, my heart kind of cracking open a little bit. And I went, wow, I think I feel a little more love. I think maybe I'm expressing a little more love in my life. And I realized that love is God. That love is the divine. Suddenly, from that place of an understanding of I mean, it's an abstract understanding. God is love. God is joy. But it's something that I could experience. Before, God was just this something out there that I couldn't understand, or if whatever was told to me was something I didn't want to understand of what God was. But with that deeper experience, then I started to feel, I love God. God loves me. I have this relationship. And that relationship, maybe it's there naturally for all of you, but I think a lot of times it takes time to cultivate that. But beyond just the growing love and connection with the divine, there's something happening internally. We have this river of energy in our spines that Naryan was touching on, this, that the spine and the brain are the altars of God. Well, the spine is their spinal highway, and when we practice the techniques, we're trying to draw ourselves inward. We're trying to not bring ourselves from the senses, from what we see, what we hear, what we feel, inward into this interior castle. And from that place, we start to realize there's a lot going on. That, yes, we are tapped into, we have a connection with an infinite source of energy, but somehow we're not able to utilize it fully. We feel maybe there's some blocks happening, somewhere that the energy is just coming out or dissipating. And so we're learning through the techniques of the practice of Hong Sa, the energization exercises. We're learning that we are not these bodies. We are energy. We are consciousness beyond that. But we learn to direct the energy. We learn to feel what's happening in here. Why am I not always full of energy? And why can I not seem to control my moods or whatever it may be? Why is it that I still get angry? What's happening? But we learn to attune to the energy within us and to direct that energy upward for awakening these higher states of consciousness. And so that getting into that spine takes time, and getting into learning where our energy is going out and where we need to draw it back in. This all takes time. It doesn't take analysis. We don't have to go and say, okay, now I've got my list of all the things I need to work on. This is happening naturally, but it does take some time.
Yeah, I would add to that it's also a purposeful progression, and that it's a safe and gradual unfolding and process. So that's one reason. Yeah, another is you have the time to, like I was sharing before, experiment and try. So you have to feel if this path resonates with you, right? Do you feel it in your heart? Can you get behind it, with your will? Because it's not just it's not an airy-fairy thing. It's very integrated. It's very grounded. So if you're going to make it a life path, that 10-month, 12-month period gives you a time to try it on and meet people that have been doing it for a while. And that's by a tree, by the fruit, you shall know the tree, right? So you can feel, wow, there's something about these people that I like. And if there's some attraction on a soul level, you follow that trail. And yeah, so that preparation period gives you time. And you also want to have the habit of meditation really well established before you take the Kriya initiation, so that you can practice. The power lies in the practice. So that's why we do take all of this time for preparation. What other questions, please? Yes.
About your trip to Assisi.
We can talk about our trip to Assisi. We could talk more maybe in our satsang as well, but I'll just briefly, so that maybe others have Kriya. Wow, I don't know where to start, but to say Assisi is an incredibly beautiful part of Italy. And I think what I took away was that devotional aspect, and just being open in the heart and just having a very informal relationship with God in that way. And the community, Ananda, for those who don't know, has a community outside of Assisi. And Dharmadevi and I were there for a Kriya retreat and some time. And just the family feeling there, it was so disarming. I would sum it up by saying, Swami wrote a song, you might know it, Rose, Shawl of Gold, for its kindness softens the human heart. I felt that in Assisi. I felt that from the people there, that there's just this overwhelming kindness that really just allowed me to let my guard down. I don't think we realize how much we're shielding, right, behind our personality and reservations and rationalizations. There's just straight from the heart. What other Kriya questions? No, my mother used to say, no, I won't say that. Please, Pavani.
So, any thoughts on, I've experienced it and I've heard people talk about there's times or phases where you're just really having trouble with Kriya or meditating in general. And do you have any words of wisdom?
Yeah. We all go through peaks and valleys, right? Sometimes where you can feel that you're a hair's breadth away from the infinite. You can just feel your meditations, things are just going smooth and easily. And then you hit, right, periods where you can have dry patches. One thing that's helpful for me is to remember that the trend is your friend. That is a saying from the financial markets, actually. But it has a spiritual purpose. You got to draw a trend line, Pavani. you're going like this. And so you forget that your pit of despair here is a lot higher than your peak back here. And you have to draw your trend line through is to God. And I was reading what Master said too. It just gave me hope. It came up when I was talking that the divine man never loses hope because he knows that he has all eternity to manifest his dreams. And what is our dream? It's to become self-realized and to share that with all. And that will come. And we have to just whatever way, I don't know, just you kind of catch that wind. Maybe you have such a beautiful connection with the music and the arts. Maybe there is a chant that's really moving you or a song, and you just, like a surfer, you just kind of ride that wave. And if you don't feel you've got a wave to ride, cling on to a fellow surfer and just wow, what's David got going on? He's got something, there's some wave, right, that he's riding, and I'll get in proximity to him. So, those are a couple thoughts, Dharmadevi.
I saw a video of a longtime meditator, and I started watching the video, and he's sitting there very upright, and he says, "I have never had a bad meditation." And I was like, I just checked out. I couldn't hear anything else he had to say because
You lost me at hello.
We all have bad meditations. It wouldn't be meditation if there weren't bad ones, good ones. And I think it was Saint Teresa of Avila, right, that said a meditation spent just fighting distractions, just fighting restlessness is a meditation well spent. So even if we're sitting and meditating and going, God, is anything happening? At least we're sitting. At least we're holding the space for when the divine is going to come and reveal himself, herself. And I think that's a very important part with all the techniques, really, because there's a lot of times that it's like, do I really have to practice Hong Sa now? And it's interesting because our astrologer friend Drupada said to me when I was in my Rahu period, which I don't have to get into, but it's a very outward kind of restless sort of period of time. And he said, Hong Sa is going to be hell for you. I was like, whoa. Well, I only started meditating when I was in that period. And so I didn't know any different. I was like, Hong Sa can get better? So it's always kind of the way we spin things that, we're just there, we're just doing it. And that's our part, is just being willing, having the dedication, and remembering, like Naryan, I think, shared earlier, just holding on to those little sacred moments where even if it's just a little touch of that divine love or that divine joy, and you go, oh, that was it. It's just a millisecond in time, but you just say, that's where I'm going, and just bringing that back into your consciousness. It's just like why we go on pilgrimages, to tap into some sacred moment that has happened in those places. And we don't really have to go anywhere. We have those moments in our hearts. It's just about tuning back into them. You can't reinvent it. You can't re-experience. You can't okay, what did I do that got me to that experience? I mean, I've tried that so many times. Wait, okay, I had that thought, and that brought me into this kind of this flow of energy, and that it doesn't work. It just is a divine grace. It's a blessing. And so if we just take it as that it was this blessed experience, and what did that feel like? How did that change me? And just try to relive it in the sense of there is more. It will get better. This too shall pass. All of these things can be just calming the mind so that it gets out of the way and we can get back into our hearts.
Too, don't forget in relation to Kriya. Krishna, Arjuna says to Krishna, the Bhagavad Gita, it's like the Bible of the East. Oh my God, trying to control the mind, Krishna, it's like trying to control the wind. It's like seemingly impossible. And we all have that experience in those types of meditations, but there's also the deep mystical truth behind that shloka that it's through the wind, it's through the breath that we control our mind. So also try to bring back in that sense of mystical awe. What did Christ say? From whence the wind comes and where it goes, no one knows. It's like with our own breath. If we can bring into our meditation, I'm trying to bring it back to meditation for you specifically, and Kriya and the techniques, but if we can flower them with a sense of mysticism, of not that, like Yogananda said, the only mystery is why more people aren't on the spiritual path. Not that it's some pie in the sky thing, but just, wow. It's like, there's an electric car in my spine. And it's circulating up and down with this joy and this ease. And that, always invoke the presence of the masters. We know this, but personally, I've been getting a lot of inspiration recently, and you might want to try the hymn to Brahma, just bringing that into actually just chanting it, even without a harmonium, just chanting the hymn to Brahma. It's the invocation to the Guru. The path of Kriya, we can't touch on everything in one evening, but it's intimately connected to being a disciple. And some people will say, well, why do I have to do that? I just want can't you just give me the technique? Well, if you go read Autobiography of a Yogi, the whole book is about the disciple-guru relationship. And that, in fact, the first sentence, right, he talks about the characteristic features of Indian culture have long been the search for ultimate verities and the concomitant disciple-guru relationship. So that we can remember also that the practice of Kriya is an act of discipleship. And that's why we have to put the I will to it. The I will is that it's not going to be easy every day, right? Some days it's more effortless. Some days it takes more energy to put out. But one of Swami's songs, every effort we spend gives more strength in the end, till our gladness in life is ever new. You'll break through, and it won't be you breaking through. It'll be him breaking through for you. Any other, what the heck is going on here?
Are you asking?
I was, putting myself in the shoes of someone that's here for the first time. Is there anyone here for the first time? All right.
Welcome.
Welcome, yeah. Any other questions or? Yeah.
Thank you all.
Thank you, great souls.